gentlemen, brothers and sisters, honorable guests, Assalamu alaikum, hello to everyone. I would like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak today, but I have a few people to thank. It's a special thanks to them. It's Dr. Scarsalo, Barbara and his team. I want to thank them because they helped my mother in her dental treatment. And it's because it was like really serious. She was in Pakistan. It was almost 4 years ago that she had her implants. And she was waiting for like 3 months to get she had the implants, and she was like still waiting for further treatment in that. And then the incident happened. And she had to move to the UK, and that treatment was just stopped in between. And she didn't have like her, she didn't get her proper treatment, and then she was in the UK and she went through a lot of infections and she went through a lot of problems. Until this August, she still had that problem that she did not have proper teeth, proper implants or proper dentures or anything, that she could eat normally and she could smile normally. And then Dr. Scarsalo finally helped her to get nice teeth back, and she's now able to smile. So thank you, Dr. Scarsalo and your team. So it's just a reminder how important dentists or doctors or nurses and everyone is in our community to help us in our health, to help us to keep ourselves healthy and fit, and to make sure that we live a healthy life. So thank you for all the work that you do. Now I would like to go back to what I stand for and the campaign that I do, so back to education. I started my campaign when I was 10 to 11, and it was the time that the Taliban, the terrorists, they banned girls' education. Before that, Swat was known as a place of beauty, as a place of tourism. But when they entered that region, it became a place of terrorism. They started bombing schools, they banned girls from going to market, they banned women from going on their own without a male person, they banned girls from getting their education. And it was January 2009 when I woke up one morning and I realized that what the Taliban were saying on FM radio was true. They literally banned girls from going to school. And since then, I realized that education was not just learning books, it was not just maths problems or science questions, it was more than that. Especially for girls, it was empowerment. It was having a voice, it was having a recognition in society. Women who were only known as someone's wife or someone's mother or someone's sister, now they became someone, now they got the opportunity to be known as women, to be known by their own names, which is what they did not want. They did not want women to have a voice, women to have a recognition in society. And that is why they knew that education should be banned. Sometimes I think that when I campaign around the world and I talk to political leaders to invest more in education and to give importance to education, and sometimes leaders don't listen. They don't listen to your voice, they don't invest in education, and right now like there's more than $39 billion lack of funding in the secondary education every year. But sometimes I think that the terrorists, they're even more clever than our world leaders, because they know that education is important in a society, and that is why they banned it, because they knew that society would go forward, women would go forward if they're educated. So I started my campaign since then, and I used media, I used articles, giving interviews to TV channels, blogging, all these resources that were available there as a platform for myself to speak out for my rights, to go to school and to have peace in my region, but also for other girls to have a voice and to get their right of education and peace back in the valley. And I started then, but a lot of things happened in that whole time. Girls' education was banned, then the people of Swat, more than 2.4 million of that whole region, they became internally displaced, and we had to leave our homes for more than 3 months, and people were in refugee camps, some were settling in other regions with their relatives, and in some regions people just open their homes to these strangers and saying that you have lost your homes, you are welcome to our homes. And people were ready to welcome people, and they opened not only the doors of their houses but the doors of their hearts. And so we were displaced for almost 3 months. But back then in August, when the military operation was done, we returned back to Swat Valley and things started again. We started going to school again, and the Taliban, they flew away from the region. But I saw that it was not just terrorism that was stopping girls from getting their education. There were many other difficulties as well that girls were facing. And that included child labor, child trafficking, those cultural norms and traditions that did not accept women equally to men, and many other issues like poverty. And since then I decided that I cannot stop this campaign. I have to continue speaking out, because I see many girls in my region. When I go to school, they are sitting in their houses, or they're working in other people's houses as child labor, and they cannot learn. So I have to do something for them, and I have to speak out for them. So I continued my campaign since then, and I did not realize that this was something so threatening to the terrorists that one day they would come and they would attack me. And it was then 2012, October, that my school bus was stopped, and two people, one was talking to the driver while another boy came to the back and he asked, "Who is Malala?" And some of my friends looked at me while I was not covering my face, as I believe that my face is my identity. He fired more than 2 or 3 bullets. One bullet hit me and the other 2 hit my other school friends who were sitting next to me. And that was, I think, the longest journey ever back home, because I was on my way back home, but since that attack I was taken to the hospital, then I was taken to Peshawar and Islamabad, other regions in Pakistan for further treatment, and then I was brought to the UK. And since that day I haven't been able to see my home, and I haven't been able to go back and see my home. So it has been a very long journey since then, but I'm hoping that I'll go back to Pakistan inshallah very soon. So I was in the UK and I was recovering, I was in the hospital, and I was again at a different position where I needed to think whether I wanted to continue this mission, continue this campaign or not. And I realized that this is now a second life, and this is for a purpose, and this is for a cause. And I realized that people were now standing with me from all over the world. They were sending their prayers and their best wishes. And I realized that God was supporting me in my cause, and that even death was supporting me, and death did not want me to be there so early and wanted me to continue my campaign for education. And since then, I continued my mission to speak out globally for girls and their rights, and we set up the Malala Fund. And really we focus on 3 things. First is advocacy, making sure that girls' voice reach to our world leaders, reach to those responsible people who should be answerable to their people of their country. And in that campaigning, I highlight the issue of 12 years of quality education for every child. That whether a child is a poor or rich, whether a child is black or white or brown, whether he is from Pakistan or India or America, whether the child is a refugee or not, every child deserves full quality education, both primary and secondary. My second goal is to speak out for refugee children. As I mentioned, that we were displaced from our home for almost 3 months. Since then, it has been my campaign to speak out for refugee children. And I have seen and I have visited many refugee camps in the world, from camps, Syrian refugee camps in Jordan and Lebanon, to refugee camps in Kenya and Rwanda, and seeing these beautiful and amazing children living in these difficult conditions, but still having an ambition to learn and to get their education. That is their dream. So I make sure that their voices are heard. And this is my advocacy campaign, to reach to world leaders and raise the voice of children and speak on their behalf. But the second thing through the Malala Fund, which we do, is investing in projects on the ground. And that I do because I believe that if we can build one school in Lebanon, if we can support a few girls in Pakistan who are suffering from domestic child labor, when I go and when I meet the leader of that country, I can tell that leader that, look, I have done one school, I have educated and helped 40 girls out of poverty or out of domestic child labor, and now they are able to go to school. What can you do? Because you are the one who is responsible for their education and for their rights. So we do work on the ground, making sure that through the fundraising and through the donations that people make, we are able to educate as many children as we can, whether it's giving them scholarships, whether it's building schools for them. So in Lebanon, on my 18th birthday, we opened a school for Syrian refugee girls. In Nigeria, where I went on my 17th birthday, my birthday is called Malala Day, since I gave the speech at the UN on my 16th birthday. So they called it Malala Day, and then that's when I was born, long ago. And it's the 12th of July, 1997, long ago. So since the UN speech, which was on my 16th birthday, I go to different countries to raise specific issues that these girls are going through. So on my 17th birthday, I went to Nigeria, and I went and met the girls who escaped from the abduction by Boko Haram. I met some of the parents, and I met the president of Nigeria, and I spoke directly to him that what have you done so far? 3 months have passed, what have you done for the girls? What have you done for their families? And he promised, and the next week, he promised to meet the parents, and he did, and he financially supported them, so at least something was done. And then on my 18th birthday, we opened a school in Lebanon, and it was for Syrian refugee girls. And then on my 19th birthday this year, I went to Kenya and Rwanda, and through the Malala Fund, we supported projects there in the refugee camp, Dadaab refugee camp. And we did a session, and we showed Hinembi Malala film. We taught girls about advocacy and about empowering them and giving them knowledge about technology and like IT and those things. So it's giving them, empowering them. So every year on my 18th, on my birthday, I go somewhere to stand up with the girls. So this is like work on the ground that we do. But we also make sure that we amplify the voices of these young girls. So finding those girls who want to speak out for their communities, who need a platform to raise their voice. And we have found those girls. In Jordan, I met a girl, Mozoon. She's a Syrian refugee, and she has passion to speak out for our community. She wants to become a journalist. And now we say that we have a Mozoon Malala army to bring change for all Syrian refugee children. And so it is finding those girls and empowering them. And girls in Nigeria, like Amina, and girls from Pakistan like Kainat, empowering them and giving them a platform to speak out. And we are working on it further to make sure that tomorrow we can build up an army of girls who are able to speak out for their rights, who have a platform to raise their voice. And thankfully, things are changing. Things are changing, and through our advocacy, a lot has changed in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The leaders are only promising lower secondary school education to children. And through the Malala Fund campaigning, we made sure that it was 12 years of quality education to every child. And along with that, we have been speaking out for refugee children to make sure that there is enough funding raised for Syrian refugee children's education, and a lot more. So this is the work that I have been doing. But I also am in school right now, in the last year of my school, and I have sent my university application to 4 different universities in the UK, so pray for me. So I can get into the one I like the most. And thank you for listening.
Please welcome ADA Executive Director, Dr. Kathy O'Loughlin, and ADA President, Dr. Carol Gomez Summerholz.